And if there was something about that song that was like quintessentially your spirit, go back and bring that out later once you have the vocabulary and the know-how to do so.
Highly underrated technique, beatboxing, or if you're trying to figure out a melody for your song, sit there and just fucking hum at your computer. I will frequently have like 4 layers of just audio channels where I have shittily hummed a melody for like a lead or a bass line or a rhythm for the drop, because I'm sitting there like noodling in the synth. I'm like, I don't have anything. Play the kick and snare, hit record, and just go like that will get you further than so many attempts at trying to do that same exact thing with the synths that you already have open. And even if you're just trying to come up with like a drum beat and you just want to like have a human sequence, literally just use your computer keyboard. One key for the kick and the other for the snare, and literally just boom, cha, boom, boom, cha, boom, boom. Like, doesn't have to be complicated, but just doing that is going to get you a much more human feeling rhythm than you would just like plugging it into the MIDI roll.
Dude, that's great. I love it.
Yeah, that whole technique of using beatbox and you're humming and then making a beat out of it. Actually, I haven't watched the masterclass, but from my friends that have, they said that's basically Timberland's entire process. And that guy's multi-platinum on top of multi-platinum. So who's going to argue with greatness?
Yeah,
for real.
Definitely.
And it's really not that hard to beatbox. So quick anecdote, I used to be a preschool teacher, and I taught my preschool students in order to get their attention, like when they're being unruly, I would just start beatboxing. You know, anytime an adult does something, kids are going to be infatuated with it because they're so uncoordinated and crappy at what they try and do that when you do something totally mundane, it's impressive to them. So whenever they would be like throwing a fit or whatever, I'd just be like, boom, boom, and they'd all shut up and just be like, what's this adult doing? So I started to teach 5-year-olds how to beatbox, and sure enough, they could pick it up quickly, and you just have to count to 4. So what I would do is I'd be like, start doing this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and now we're going to replace the 2s and the 4s with ka, 1 and ka and 2 and ka and 1 and ka and 2 and ka, and now we're going to replace the ands with t, 1 t, 2 t, 3 t. Oh shit, I did it wrong. Of course, here I am trying to.
And now we're going to replace one with fa. And fa.
But my point is, if 5 and 6 and 7-year-old preschool kids can beatbox after a couple of trials and errors, anyone can do it. So you really should try and incorporate it into your music, because it's talking your music into the computer as opposed to clicking it into the computer, which is way more zeros and ones than music.
Yeah, totally. Pro tip, it should sound cringy when you hum melodies and bass line wobs and whatever. Yeah, you should shudder at the thought of anybody hearing it.
Don't inhibit yourself. Just sit there and literally record a 3 minutes of you doing a bunch of different variations, and eventually one will be like, oh yeah, I think that'll actually work pretty good. And then even if you don't come up with that rhythm exactly, at least you've generated a bunch of ideas for yourself.
For sure. Something else I've noticed for good melody creation is letting other people do the work for you, in the sense that if you play somebody else's song really quietly and put it in another room so you can just barely perceptibly hear it, your imagination is going to fill in the blank spots. And so if you can listen to somebody else's music and let it be quiet and be distant from you, your imagination is going to come up with something, and you can go and record that. And if you listen to the original song that was the source of your inspiration, it's going to be a completely different melody because your brain was filling in the blank spots. So you'll be like, oh shit, that's not even what I was listening to. I thought I was listening to Bass Nectar, but sure enough, it's Godspeed You Black Emperor. And it'll totally come out in a completely different way.
Yeah, that's awesome that you mentioned that. Sometimes I'll be like literally laying down in bed and I have a fan on.
That's it. That's what I was getting at.
Swear to God, there's fucking music playing somewhere. There's my brain turning the fan into some sort of music. It's so strange, but that concept is 100% true.
Especially if you're coming down.
I'm glad you guys bring that up because I've definitely been like, am I going schizo or am I hearing like a symphony playing right now?
You guys don't just have music playing in the back of your head at all times? This is not, I thought that's why we were all here. I just couldn't get it to shut up, so I had to learn how to computerize it.
True. You're not wrong about that.
And having some sort of like white noise, like, I mean, there's that classic trope of like the shower idea. You know, it's like you're doing something mundane that you do every day. I'm going to clean my left arm, and then I'm going to clean my right arm, and then I'm going to think of an idea and say, screw soap and the rest of myself. I got to run back to the DAW. And, you know, or like if you're driving, I've had some of like the most inspirational moments and had to use my phone voice recorder to like get the whole idea down just because I was doing something every day. And then all of a sudden the creativity just started pouring out, which kind of brings us back to what we were talking about at the top of the hour. Like, what do I do when there's no creativity? You know, like do something else, go for a drive, take a shower, allow anything. And then something else I've been telling some of my newest, like they're in the earliest stages of their production, my students, and just make crappy songs. Stop focusing on this. It's your third song ever. Stop focusing on why isn't this good. It's just because you're not good enough yet. It's okay. Just go make a bunch of crappy ones, turn them into me, and ask like what's working and what's not. And then you'll be like, okay, cool. I'll keep doing that one thing and experiment elsewhere.
I love that you come to that because I've been trying to get so many of my more beginning students who have a ton of potential to embrace this philosophy of quality through quantity. So make 100 songs that you want to throw away before you create one good one. They all think that they're coming up with fucking opus of their lifetime in this one particular song. It's like, just hold off on that. Learn everything. Because in 6 months from now, you're going to be so much better when you look back. You're going to be like, how could I have thought that was good? But that's part of growing. That's natural. You want that process. But I think what's really important for amateurs to develop, and I mean amateur complimentarily, like at least you've taken the first step on the journey. It's not bad to be an amateur. I'm an amateur in my own way. Like what you need to learn is you need to have confidence in your choices. You need to come to understand what's working and what isn't working. And what I'll tell people, or what I tell myself, because sometimes there's a realization that I'm having about like a particular synth or a particular sound, and I don't want to accept that it's just not working. I try and delude myself into saying, this is working, I can release this. And honestly, you've got to develop a sense of confidence to move away from that. And where I think that confidence comes from, once you have it established, where it comes from, when you know something is working, you're going to be enthusiastic about it working. It's going to feel like, fuck yes, this is sick, this is working. That is working. And when something's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that works, that's not working. So make sure that you're in tune with your own messages. Your body is sending you signals all the time. Try and subdue your active ego voice and listen to the passive body voice and be like, is this working, or am I just deluding myself into making it work? And if that's the question you're asking, it's not working, friend. I promise you it's not working if you have to ask that question.
Yeah, allow it to work. Don't try to convince yourself it's working. That's great advice.
Yeah.
I was having a text conversation with one of our students and you know, biggest supporters, Holy Outlaw, today, and just going over the same stuff. Like, yo, like, you know, you don't have to make this one great. Just make this one, and then make the next 100. And like, there's songs I'm going back to this month that I started 2 years ago. I even put out on my SoundCloud 2 years ago, and I found that song again and be like, oh, I finally know how to make this shit work. It was all right, but like, now that I know how to not make a layer cake, I know how to use the Skrillex Mixbucks template in the weekly download. I know how to, you know, like go through a mix, and I know all of these things now. And then I can find out of that pile of 100 songs I made, the 5 that I actually care about, and go back to those and be like, I'm going to spend some extra time and revamp and re-release these ones officially, because those are the ones that are worth it. But I could have spent 1,000 hours 2 years ago and gotten nowhere but frustrated.
Totally. I'm glad that you guys brought up some points there, Luke and Chris. And shout out to Holy Outlaw. Especially, I think he's trying something like very innovative and treading new ground. and trying to do like blues, electro kind of influence stuff. And he's mixing all these genres. And I'll often do sessions with people where they're like getting very experimental. And we're in a time now where people are really pushing the bounds of music. And I think in that case, especially, like you said, just write a bunch of songs, especially when you're going into this totally untreaded territory. You are that person with the machete going into the jungle and being like, I know that's a clear path, but I'm going to just start swinging over there and see what I find. And it becomes even more so important to have somebody, Chris, like yourself, that's established and has gone through all of those trials and tribulations yourself, to be like, oh, I see where you're going there. Do more of that. And then when they're a year or 2 or 5 down the road and they reflect on their songs, they'll be like, oh, I thought this would work in the combination of styles, but maybe this part needs to be more blues and this part needs to be more electro. And I thought it was the other way around. And so I think it's easy to like lose your path or to get overwhelmed with all these options. And I love that you guys brought up some of those points, namely, don't worry about what's working. Just write shitty songs if that's what it means. And those songs will tell you, that feeling in your body will tell you which direction you should go.
Yeah.
And also, a song is never finished. You know, like Bass Nectar, they're living. They're living creatures. They're the expression of a spirit that you felt for a brief moment that you've tried to capture in time. So it's almost a living thing that you've tried to freeze into the temporal framework of Ableton or of Reason or whatever. Woo. But even Bass Nectar, you know, he's still releasing songs. He's remixing songs that he worked on in 2005, 2006. So even if something has to be shelved, it doesn't mean it's dead and that you can't come back to it. So grow as much as you can grow now. And if there was something about that song that was like quintessentially your spirit, go back and bring that out later once you have the vocabulary and the know-how to do so.
Yeah, you have that art inside of you, but production is about the ability to take that divine inspiration and channel it through the science of production, arrangement, and engineering.
Yeah, you're right. And it's cool that you're using the word science because it is a science. It's not a subjective experience. Electronic music is very objective.
Totally. On that idea of creativity, though, how do you feel about that from a philosophy standpoint? Do you think creativity is also very scientific, or like Luke, you use the word divine there? What's your relationship with creativity? And if you think it is this, you mentioned you tap into creativity.
So I think
how do you cultivate that relationship?
My whole philosophical outlook is basically the antenna theory of consciousness. I believe our brains are antenna, and there are signals constantly floating through the universe. And based on our openness, we can tap into different frequencies. I believe very much that science defines the world. I'm not very, I don't believe in any dogmatic principles about the nature of the universe. And what science tells us is that everything is sound. Everything is sound waves. And so you are receptive to certain sound waves. And there are some people out there who are just miserable, evil motherfuckers. And I think that's because they have tapped into, and their tuning is such, the tuning of their antenna, the tuning of their brains is such that they're always kind of drowning in this dismal, miserable kind of frequency range. And that is affecting how their relationships and how they act on the world. Whereas for me, I think that you can change your tuning. You can change it through psychedelics. You can change it through meditation. You can change it through revisiting traumas and trying to correct the traumas of your lifetime. But I definitely think that all inspiration is outside of us. And I think that's the place that we return to when our antenna is finally damaged. Not that I honestly, I don't even believe in a soul as a concept as such. I believe far more in like the universal consciousness, the universal spirit of all energy and matter, which we are just another expression of. And I think our brains are different antenna that we can kind of gear towards things. So if you watch a bunch of videos of people torturing cats or fucking, killing black people or whatever, you're going to be tuning into that. You're going to be taking it in. You're going to be trying to resonate with that frequency. And therefore it's likely that you'll succeed and that you'll become more negative as a whole because of that. Similarly, you can also try and tune into human compassion and empathy, and you can get the helpers the helper's high by helping more people. And the more you stretch for those kinds of frequencies and that kind of electricity, the more you're going to be pulled in that direction, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So I think that we are, I think that everything is outside of us, and consciousness is completely outside of the body, but what we're able to is tap into it in certain ways. So for me, I try and be really sensitive to my moments of inspiration. If something is coming and it feels like this is welling up, outside of my head, but behind me, waiting to come into the computer, I drop what I'm doing and I try and channel that thing. But no matter what you do, you can't always tune into those frequencies. So you just have to know and develop a confidence that when you're feeling that, you need to act right away to channel it, because otherwise it's going to be like a breeze and blow past you, and you're never going to be able to catch that inspirational wind again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also that you mentioned, you're not always going to be able to get it down in the exact way that you originally imagined it, or you originally tuned into that frequency. But that's okay, because every single one of us is a lens. We're all a lens through which that creativity is refracted. And the way we're shaped by our experiences, by our likes, by our exposures is that. So it's like, oh man, I got this crazy melody. I make certain kinds of drum beats around melodies that I've been exposed to and that I'm inspired to make again. And that's going to be part of my lens. And the types of sound design I choose is going to be based on my tools and my tastes and my abilities. And all of that is what makes it so cool. The fact it's not that I was able to make exactly what I heard in my head. It's that I'm able to allow the process of inspiration and humanity coexist with technology and make it all flow somehow.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it's a process of letting go to be able to be okay with the fact that you don't have all of the ideas in your head. And it's funny how, like, once you're okay with that, then more ideas come.
Definitely.
It's like so reverse psychology, but
you got to get out of your own way. Your ego is always interrupting and being an obstacle of these frequencies. So you have to know how to get out of the way of those frequencies so that they can be channeled. I think that part of the process of coming up with great music is not getting everything you hear out exactly, because you can't imagine it all. And this is why we do creative mud pies. We use chaos to generate great sounds, because we're not expected to come up with every fucking noise from our imagination. Let the process drive you in directions you would never be able to go intentionally. And you're going to get all kinds of really cool happy accidents.
Happy accidents. Amen. I mean, same thing with like randomly clicking into a preset folder, or randomly grabbing a sound and clicking through a sample folder and being like, nope. Ooh, okay.
I can't tell you how many drum beats I've made that have ended up great rather than okay, because I was trying to click in another kick drum on the downbeat and I had the headphone icon on, and it like put a kick drum like a few milliseconds before this snare or whatever. I'm like, oh shit, that's actually cool. Like, that's a perfect groove for this. And then you work backwards to go back to that. But that kind of thing is like so integral to the process of making good music that, like, one thing that is tough to understand is when those like little moments hit you, you have to like that instant put it in, because if you're like, no, I'm going to finish clicking in all the kicks on the downbeat and I'm going to come back, you're going to forget where that kick was. The same thing like when you're screwing with a patch and like you move a knob and you're like, oh shit, that sounds really cool. Like, use that thing that just got sparked in your head right that instant and build it into whatever you're working on, so that like all of those, you're able to efficiently channel all of that, you know, inherent randomness of the universe that inspires us into making better music, rather than thinking that you are so good that you're going to be able to fully encapsulate all of those random bits later. Like, no, you have to channel it and in that moment for sure.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned like the the ego getting in the way. And it occurred to me when you were saying that the ego is our illusion of separation, our illusion of individuality, which is
I think it's also our illusion of control.
Amen. And the actual creativity is tapping into the connection and the chaos and the harmony that comes in the chaos.
Definitely, dude. Definitely. And it's hard to know. It's hard to know. Like I said, you have to develop a sense of confidence when something is working. So sometimes, not like I said, out of 100% of the shit and the chaos that you make, only 10% of that, even 2% of that is going to be worthwhile in a project. So it's always better to overproduce. Because if you have 1,000 things, then you get 20 things, as opposed to if you only have 100 things, you only get 2 things. So it's important to recognize what works, but also to not be too concerned about it and just overcreate. And you can always go back and sort out in a nighttime session. You can sort out what was working from what wasn't.
Yeah, it's funny. Like even to this day, the thing that, with all of my years of experience and knowledge, the thing that I have to continuously remind myself of while producing music is, this shit ain't working. Make more stuff. Like, don't stop thinking about how to tweak this thing that you're working on to force it to fit what you're doing. You're solving the problem from the wrong angle. Like if you're stuck, it's because you're thinking that you can force your ability to make this thing that was in your head work. Try like 10 other plucks, try 10 other bass lines. Like, you'll probably get it on the third one that you try. But like, if you keep trying to do the same thing that you're doing in different ways, you're going to end up with the same mediocre thing in a different form, right?
Yes.
You have to continuously attack it from different angles to be able to come up with the thing that you're like, oh, wow, that's actually unique and interesting.
Do you guys follow the 5-minute rule, where if something's not giving you fruitful results in 5 minutes, you abandon it?
I try to.
Cool.
I'd like to. I can't say I've got a perfect record on that rule.
I feel like it depends. If the idea has given some promise initially, then definitely see it to its completion. But I definitely always tell people, like, especially for any very fundamental parts of your track, which I would say kick, snare, sub are the absolute foundation of your mix. I always tell people if something's even 5% off, switch out the sample.
That's a great way of putting it, because those are the fundamentals. The best producers in the world are just using kick, sub, snares, and like one face, like a vocal chop, like get your motherfucking hands up, and like dance floors go crazy for that kind of shit. So it's obviously working.
I mean, that's basically what you hear at loud shows when it's like totally cranked. Kick, snare, sub, like.
It's true. Where does the music go in those situations? I always wonder that. Like, I'll be eating bread bowls at Panera and I'll just be like, why can I only hear voices and fucking beats?
So do you know about the Fletcher-Munson curve?
I do.
Yeah, so it changes the exaggeration between the differences in the frequency spectrum change depending on how loud the signal is. So the quieter it is, the more rolled off the extreme highs and lows are with the mids. And then when it's at a relatively moderate volume, you hear it. And then when it's cranked at a festival, forget about the mids. Kick, snare, sub, and like maybe extreme high end.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that big white noise downlifter just washing over everything. I like it. What's up, humans? It's Luke, your friendly neighborhood trap Jesus. Thank you so much for watching our videos. We appreciate you. Remember to like and subscribe to our channels. And if you have any questions or topics that we need to cover on the show, put them in the comments. Appreciate you. Peace, and peace among worlds.